everyone. We are out here at the Big Spring State Park, located in the Tuscarora State Forest in Perry County. And we are talking with forester Luke Book today about his job and what he encounters as a forester and also an educator.
Yep.
Hi Luke, thanks for joining us today
Yes.
in this episode. And can you tell our viewing audience how you got interested in forestry and what kinds of things you did to prepare for your career?
Okay. Well, thanks for having me today. Yeah. So I got interested in forestry probably, I grew up on a farm in Juniata County, and I grew up hunting and fishing and working on a farm. So I always liked being in the woods and always wanted to know what the trees were, learn the different types of trees. So I actually didn't get into forestry right away, right out of high school. I grew up on a farm and I ran farm equipment. So I actually I went out west on a combine crew for the summer when I graduated high school. So I didn't actually go to forestry school right away. I went the following year. But I went and looked at Penn Tech. So I went to Penn Tech up in Williamsport, Penn College, for a forestry degree. I have an associate's degree in forestry. And so I went and looked at it and I liked that. I always was interested in forestry. We do a lot of timber management, wood products. It's a large industry in Pennsylvania. So I always was interested in learning the trees and the industry in general. So as I got to learn more about it, I decided to go to Penn Tech for forestry. So that's what got me interested in it, was just being outside and like the outdoors.
What would you say your favorite part of your job is
now? My favorite part actually is meeting new people. So when I first started, I did a lot of timber management. We mark timber sales and sell trees to the local sawmills. Now I'm a service forester, and I do a lot of events with kids, and I meet lots of people and help them understand forest management. So that's the part I like, is meeting new people and helping them out, helping them educate them on sustainable forest management, and just get to do a lot of different things. Really, we fight forest fires, we do educational events like this with the Envirothon. It's just a lot of different things. So it's fun to get into a lot of different things. It's kind of a seasonal job. Really depends on the time of year and what you're doing. So it's fun.
So on a normal spring day, and today is March 10th, 2021, what's on your normal job list duties for the spring?
Good, yeah. So usually this time of year, you can see there's still some snow on the ground, but we're coming into spring fire season. So here in Pennsylvania, it can actually get pretty dry here at the end of March and April. So right now we're actually gearing up for firefighting, wildfires. It can get pretty dry. Last year's leaves are on the ground, dead grass. The sunlight is starting to get stronger now. And as it dries out the forest floor, people, start a lot of wildfires. They're burning their trash. So that's one of the biggest things that we have to do this time of year is being aware of the weather conditions. We do a lot of events with Smokey Bear, trying to help people understand, to be cautious when they're burning their trash. So that's the biggest thing. Like I said, it's a seasonal job, and in the spring, that's when we have a lot of our wildfires here. So the next few weeks is pretty important. If we watching the weather, if we don't get a lot of rain, it can get pretty dry. So that's a lot of what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, that's a lot of things to think about as the seasons change. Do you think that there are things that the young folks watching can do to prepare to get into a career in forestry? What would be your advice to them?
Yeah, really, I remember being that age, and it's kind of hard to know. I would really think about, what you want to do for your career. If you like being in the outdoors, we're outside a lot. There's a lot of different forestry jobs. I mean, we do timber sales, so there's timber marking, there's recreation, we do trail work. I'm a service forester, so I meet lots of people. I do events with kids. So it's really, really, as far as preparing, I would just really try to think about what you want to do. If you like forestry, and doing, there's a lot of different jobs. It's a very, wide field with the different types of jobs in forestry. So, really try to think about what you want to do for a career. It is kind of a big thing when you're that age, when you're 18. What do I want to do with the rest of my life? And that's something that, like I said, I didn't really decide right away. I actually got out of high school and didn't go to forestry school right away. So I think that's what I usually tell kids. I think it's important to think about it and not rush into a decision that, maybe you're not totally sure about, but that's it.
Well, good. Yes, that's very enlightening. And stay tuned for our next interview with Luke, where we go over the Envirothon Forestry Station Training.
Okay, we're here on a tree, the eastern hemlock. This is Pennsylvania's state tree. So I'm going to talk some about the anatomy of trees and how they work. So this tree is our Pennsylvania state tree, the eastern hemlock, and like all trees, they have an outer bark that is protecting the tree. So the outer bark protects the tree as it grows from animals rubbing against it, woodpeckers and different animals. And then it has the inner bark, which is right inside the cambial layer. There's the inner bark. And as the tree, this is springtime, as the trees leaf out, they'll make energy through photosynthesis. So the tree will make sugars, and then that's carried down through the inner bark, like the phloem, and that's right inside the bark in the cambial layer. And then you have the sapwood, which this time of year the sap is coming up from the roots of the trees. So if you've ever cut a tree this time of year, the sap's coming up. A lot of people will tap sugar maples to get maple, to get sap to make syrup. So the trees are really starting to, come alive here soon. They'll be leafing out. So the trees, bring water up through the sapwood, and then it goes up into the leaves. And then inside the tree is the heartwood. So as the tree grows every year, it produces more growth rings. And on the inside of the tree, when you get into the heartwood, that's some of the structural support of the tree that helps to hold the tree up. And then of course you have the roots. The roots are also kind of like an anchor for the tree. They absorb water and nutrients. And then, that helps to hold the tree up, because some of these trees here, they get to be very large. They weigh, thousands and thousands of pounds. So the roots are an anchor to help, hold the tree. So that's just some of the anatomy of a tree. We're going to talk about, this eastern hemlock here has some hemlock woolly adelgid on it. We're going to, you can see that if you look close. It has you can see the hemlock woolly adelgid has some white fuzz, and inside there's a little aphid. So what it is it's a little aphid that sucks the sap out of the needles. So slowly over time, that will slowly kill the tree. So there's a lot of invasives that we have to deal with now. and HWA is one of them, the hemlock woolly adelgid. So we in this Big Spring State Park here, we've treated some of the trees. There is a chemical you can treat them with that helps systemically. It goes up in and it will kill the insect, and we did that. It's probably been 5 or 6 years ago, so we might be doing that again here. But this is a big threat to our Pennsylvania state tree. Hemlocks are very important to our streams, to keep our streams cool, the trout streams. It's very, very important to the ecology of our streams. So there's a lot of different invasive pests that we have to deal with. Hemlock woolly adelgid's one. Gypsy moth is another one. We're probably going to be doing some gypsy moth spraying this spring. There's some places in Perry County here where there's gypsy moth. They attack the oak trees as the oak trees leaf out. The gypsy moth are defoliators, a defoliator caterpillar, and they chew on the leaves of the oaks. So we have some places in Perry County with gypsy moth this year. So there's going to be some gypsy moth spraying in May. That's about when the leaves come out. They're pretty small, and as they grow, the gypsy moth hatch, and then they chew on the leaves. And there's some spraying that you can do to kill the gypsy moth. So there's a lot of different invasive pests. That's another one. Spotted lanternfly is a new one. It's relatively new. I think it's been in Pennsylvania since 2014. It's in this county. There's a quarantine now for spotted lanternfly, and it's a pretty bad one for grapes and orchards, some fruits. It does attack some of our native trees, but the Department of Agriculture's really watching that one, and they have a quarantine for that. They're trying to slow the spread of that spotted lanternfly so it doesn't hurt the grape industry and different fruits. So that's another one that's really bad. And there's other ones. There's emerald ash borer that attacks the white ash tree, and you can find a lot of dead white ash trees that we have around here. So there's a few other ones, but that you can read about and study. The Asian longhorn beetle is another one. It's a bad one that's hasn't been detected in Pennsylvania yet, but it's the mitigation efforts to stop that one can be pretty tough. You have to cut a lot of the species it attacks, birch and maple, and you have to chip it and dispose of it. So one of the biggest things that we have to deal with is invasive species, whether it's invasive plants or invasive insects. So, in forestry, every few years, there's usually something that's, we're always looking at how to stop invasive plants and insects. So, that's something that we're trying to work on, trying to figure out. There's always our forest health department. They're always studying ways to slow the spread of some of these invasive plants, and that ends up affecting the forest in different ways if you lose some of your native species from these invasive plants. So that's something that we as forest managers, we're looking more into the future, how to slow the spread of some of these invasive pests. Okay, so we're here right over top of a stream here of the headwaters of the Sherman's Creek at Big Spring State Park, and we're going to talk some about forest ecology. So in Pennsylvania, there's different forest types, different ecological forest types in Pennsylvania. In the northern part of PA, you have the northern hardwood forest. So that makes up about a third of Pennsylvania. If you go up to the northern PA. The northern hardwood forest is pretty extensive, and that makes up species like black cherry, sugar maple, yellow poplar, red maple, and it's a little bit different forest type than we have here in Perry County and south central PA. So when you think about the ecosystems, we look at forest types. So here in Perry County and the southern 2/3 of Pennsylvania, we have oak forests. We have oak, hickory. There's maple and birch. So there's some similar species that you have in the northern hardwood forest, but here it's we have oak and hickory. There's different types of oak and hickory, and then red maple and birch, and also sugar maple. So we have a lot of different species, in the oak forest type. So when you look at forest types, there's different forest types that we have, and they all relate differently, and they're good for wildlife habitat in different ways. Earlier we were looking at the eastern hemlock. So when you get into talking about forest types, you get into talking about tree species and their shade tolerance. Species like the hemlock and sugar maple are shade tolerant, so they are able to grow in a shaded forest, and you can read about some of that information. So as a forest matures, like here you have around us in this big spring park, there's a lot of mature trees, a lot of mature oak, and what you have is, you can see there's some of the trees that are growing in the understory are shade tolerant. So you can have hemlocks, some pine species, and some shade tolerant species. So as a forest matures and it gets to be like over 100 years old, you can have, it can be very dark in the understory. So you can have species growing that are shade tolerant. So, and then on the reverse of that, you can have species that are, shade intolerant. So if you think of, probably some of you, maybe if you've ever seen an old field that maybe isn't farmed anymore and it's growing back, a lot of times if you don't farm a field, or if a place is let go, it'll eventually grow back in trees, and that's called forest succession. So over time, trees will grow, and forest succession is a natural part of the ecosystem. So shade intolerant species will start to grow, like white ash, some other species. You'll get, sometimes you'll see cedar trees growing, black cherry. If you look at the list of shade intolerant species, a lot of times that's what will be quick growing, and that's what will come in. So that helps you to understand a little bit about, the forest ecology. So, the ecosystems are, a big part of for wildlife habitat. Wildlife need, these different successions. Early successional habitat is very important now. There's species that are endangered, like the golden-winged warbler, and different species that are dependent on early successional habitat. So forest management is really important to, trees are a renewable resource, and you can harvest timber. We do that here on the Tuscarora State Forest. We harvest trees, and we do that sustainably by looking for regeneration. You can look through the woods and see young seedlings coming in, young saplings, and that's where you can harvest timber. So, the forest is really important for wildlife in its different stages. That early successional habitat, when it's just young and thick, and then as it grows older, it gets into the pole timber stand, and then, eventually into large diameter trees. And all those different stages are very important for wildlife. Animals need the acorns and the hickory nuts, as for a mast crop. So large mature forests are very important. But also that early successional habitat is very important as well. That gives wildlife cover. A lot of times they need cover to escape predators. So, we try to balance the age classes of the forest. We try to, harvest timber sustainably and, try to keep, even ages across the forest. So, it's important here along the stream, to have a nice shaded stream for, wild trout, native trout. Here along the Sherman's Creek, there's a lot of native trout fishing. Like I was saying earlier about our eastern hemlock, we try to, protect them and help to try to get rid of the hemlock woolly adelgid, because your native trout streams are very important to keep them shaded, to keep them cool for the trout. And also the ecology of the stream. It's important to have your oaks and hickories, for the, macroinvertebrates and stuff, for the leaves to come into the streams. So that's all a part of the ecosystem. So forests are, are really, really important. These large tracts of state forests, they help to clean the water. They help to, when you have those real heavy rainstorms, forests intercept water really well, and they let the water recharge. The groundwater goes down in, and it can recharge naturally without having a lot of erosion and sedimentation. Forests are really good at capturing that groundwater, and then you don't have as much erosion and sedimentation. So that's some of the things that we look at, with forest management. We try to make sure that we're, doing best management practices. So that's some of the things you can read about under forest management, is promoting best management practices, trying to prevent erosion and sedimentation. We look, looking for young seedlings, regeneration of native trees, and like we talked about with the invasives, keeping ecosystems like this native, native species is really the most important thing. Trying to keep out those invasive plants, like Japanese stiltgrass is another one that we have quite frequently that have to get rid of. Garlic mustards, I believe, is in here. Whenever you start getting the invasive plants, the invasive plants can displace the native plants. So that's something, that changes the ecology of your forest and the soils. So, that's something that, we as foresters look at. We try to make sure we're regenerating native trees and native flora and fauna, and looking out for the native trees that we have. So that's some of the most important work we do as land managers, is thinking about the forest as a whole, for wildlife, having a lot of different stages of forest successional growth. There's been more and more emphasis on early successional habitat, because a lot of our forests have matured, and trying to get good forest management done by establishing that early growth and thick habitat for native species is very important. So that's some of the things that we're doing. And clean water is one of the most important things that large forests provide. So this large tract here of the Tuscarora State Forest is really important, for clean water here in the Sherman's Creek. Okay, so here we have some acorns and hemlock cones off the eastern hemlock. So acorns are very important for wildlife. The white oak acorns are one of the favored by deer and turkey and bear. You don't always get acorns every year, but there's white oak. The white oak family is chestnut oak and white oak, and they usually produce a decent amount of acorns, and they're usually among the favorites. So chestnut oak and white oak usually produce fairly decent crops every few years. Then there's also red oak red oak acorns, black oak family. So you got the red oak family and the white oak family. And but basically all acorns are favored by deer and wildlife, but the white oak family is a little more sweet that they like. So the acorns are one of the most important food sources that we have in the Tuscarora State Forest. Ever since we lost the American chestnut, back around the early 1900s is when we lost the American chestnut to the chestnut blight. So that, we lost a lot of food when that happened. So the American chestnut was one of the major food sources. It produced, chestnuts every year. And then once it died, pretty much all you have, when you have your oaks produce acorns, hickory nuts, every tree produces, a seed crop. And, a lot of them are, any native tree is important to wildlife food source. But a lot of your conifers, like hemlocks, these are little hemlock cones, and they have seeds in them. Of course, when they open up, the seeds come out. But, squirrels, birds, they love seeds like white pine. White pine cones are bigger. This is a little hemlock, and the seeds are very tiny, and they're probably out by now. But a lot of the seeds, the native seeds the trees produce, are very small. Sometimes they're as small as little pepper flakes, birch seeds, like pepper. You can see in February, like you'll see sometimes the seed come off in the wintertime. But just about every native tree produces a seed that is favored by wildlife in some way. Squirrels, birds, they'll cache them away in the wintertime in hollow trees. Sometimes they'll plant them and they'll germinate into seedlings, here in the spring. So we're coming into, March and April. Usually when you get into May, seedlings, acorns and the different seeds will germinate and, start a new tree. So that's, forest succession. When trees produce seeds, it's mostly about sunlight. These are favored food source for the animals, but when you have a hole in the canopy or have a lot of sunlight, then a lot of times these seeds will germinate into a new seedling. So that's a part of forest succession, is trees growing to maturity and producing a crop, and then a lot of them get eaten by wildlife, and that's why the forests are a very important part, to our native wildlife. Okay, well, thanks for watching today. I appreciate everybody watching this video. I hope I helped you learn some information today about forestry, and there's a lot of great material to read. There's a lot to learn about forestry and forest management. If you're interested in it, take the time to read a lot of that reference material. There's a lot of great information there. So again, my name's Luke Book. I'm a forester, service forester here on the Tuscarora State Forest. If you have any questions or you want to contact me, you can call the forestry office here in Blain. The phone number is 717-536-3191, and my email is lbook@pa.gov. Thank you.